In 1877, the richest man in America died. His name was Cornelius Vanderbilt, and when they counted his money, the number was $100 million. That was not $100 million in today's dollars. That was $100 million in 1877 dollars, which translates to roughly $3.2 billion today. At the time, it represented approximately 1/87th of the entire United States GDP. No single person in American history had ever died with more. He built it from nothing. A Staten Island farm boy with no education, no connections, no inheritance. Just a $100 loan from his mother, a small ferry boat, and an obsession with winning that bordered on terrifying. By the time he was 40, he controlled the waters around New York. By 50, he owned railroads. By 70, he was the most powerful man in the country. He crushed competitors without hesitation. He bribed politicians without embarrassment. He once told a business rival, and these are his actual words, "I won't sue you. The law is too slow. I'll ruin you." And he did. So here is the question that should keep you up at night. If one man built $3.2 billion in a single lifetime, how did his entire family manage to lose every single dollar of it in less than 50 years? And what does that story mean for you? Cornelius Vanderbilt was born in 1794 on Staten Island, the third of 9 children. His father was a farmer and part-time boatman. His mother, Phoebe, was the one who ran the household, kept the accounts, and understood that her son Cornelius was different. At age 11, he dropped out of school. At 16, he asked his mother for a loan of $100, roughly $2,400 in today's money, to buy a small periauger, a flat-bottomed sailing boat, to ferry passengers and cargo between Staten Island and Manhattan. His mother gave him the $100 on one condition. He had to plow and plant their 8-acre field before the season ended. He recruited every friend he had, finished the field in days, got his money, and never looked back. By the end of his first year, he had earned $1,000, nearly $24,000 today. He paid his mother back immediately, gave her a $1,000 bonus, and reinvested the rest. This was the pattern he would follow for the next 70 years. Earn, reinvest, expand, destroy anyone who got in the way. By 1817, he had spotted the future. Steam, not sails, not wind. Steam. He sold his sailing fleet, which was already generating serious money, and went to work as a steamboat captain for a man named Thomas Gibbons for $1,000 a year. People thought he was insane. He was already wealthy. He took a salary cut. But Vanderbilt wasn't working for Gibbons. He was studying him, learning the steamboat business from the inside, understanding the routes, the pricing, the politics, the regulations. Within a few years, he had helped Gibbons' business destroy a state-granted monopoly held by Robert Livingston and Robert Fulton. The case went to the Supreme Court, Gibbons versus Ogden, 1824, and it established the federal government's right to regulate interstate commerce. Vanderbilt didn't just win a business fight. He changed American constitutional law. Then he left Gibbons, took everything he had learned, and started his own steamboat empire. By the 1840s, his net worth was $1.2 million, roughly $44 million today. He was 46 years old. By the 1850s, during the California Gold Rush, he opened a route through Nicaragua, shorter and faster than the Panama route controlled by his rivals. He charged less. He moved faster. He made $1 million in profit in the first year alone, about $36 million in today's money. When 2 of his business partners tried to cut him out of the Nicaragua deal while he was on vacation in Europe, he sent them a letter. It read, "Gentlemen, you have undertaken to cheat me. I will not sue you, for the law is too slow. I will ruin you. Yours truly, Cornelius Vanderbilt." He ruined them. Both of them. Within 2 years, they were out of business. But the greatest move of his life came when he was already old. In 1862, Cornelius Vanderbilt was 68 years old. Most men of his era were already dead or retired. He looked at the railroad industry, chaotic, fragmented, politically corrupt, and saw something no one else saw. He started buying. First the New York and Harlem Railroad, then the Hudson River Railroad. Then, in a move that shocked Wall Street, the New York Central Railroad. He connected them all into a single unified system running from New York City all the way to Chicago. He then built Grand Central Depot in New York City, the precursor to Grand Central Terminal, as the anchor of his empire. By 1877, when he died at age 82, his railroad empire was generating what would be equivalent to hundreds of millions of dollars in annual revenue. His personal fortune, $100 million. He left $95 million of it, nearly everything, to his son William. William Henry Vanderbilt was not his father. Cornelius had never respected William. He called him slow, weak, unfit for business. For years he kept William working on a failing farm in New Jersey, essentially exiled from the family business. But William proved him wrong. He turned the farm profitable. He showed enough competence that Cornelius eventually brought him in. And when Cornelius died, William inherited nearly everything. What happened next was extraordinary, and it set the template for everything that followed. William doubled the fortune. In just 8 years, William Henry Vanderbilt grew $95 million to $200 million, roughly $6.2 billion in today's money. He did it through smart railroad management, cost-cutting, and one legendary stock sale. In 1879, under political pressure related to the railroad's monopoly power, William sold 250,000 shares of New York Central stock to a syndicate led by banker J.P. Morgan. The sale generated $30 million in a single transaction. Morgan handled the distribution so smoothly that the market barely flinched. William's comment to the press about public opinion of the railroads became one of the most infamous quotes in American business history. He said, and historians have debated the exact phrasing, something to the effect of, "The public be damned." It was a moment that defined the Gilded Age, and it made William one of the most hated men in America. He didn't care. He was worth $200 million. Then he died, in 1885, just 8 years after inheriting his father's fortune. He split it among his children, the 2 eldest sons receiving $70 million and $55 million respectively, the rest divided among the remaining heirs. And that was the beginning of the end. The math of inheritance is brutal. And the Vanderbilts taught America this lesson in real time. $200 million divided among multiple heirs was no longer a single power center. It was multiple smaller fortunes, heading in multiple directions. The 2 eldest sons, Cornelius Vanderbilt II and William Kissam Vanderbilt, built mansions. And not modest mansions. Cornelius Vanderbilt II built a 70-room mansion on Fifth Avenue in New York City that occupied an entire city block. Construction cost $3 million in 1882, the equivalent of roughly $93 million today. William Kissam Vanderbilt built the Vanderbilt Mansion on Fifth Avenue, designed by architect Richard Morris Hunt. Cost $3 million. Completed in 1882. And then there was Newport, Rhode Island. The Breakers, the summer cottage built by Cornelius Vanderbilt II in 1895. 70 rooms, modeled on Italian Renaissance palaces. Construction cost $7 million, equivalent to over $250 million today. It had its own power plant, its own seawater and freshwater plumbing systems, a great hall with a ceiling rising 45 feet. This was not a home. This was a statement, a declaration that the Vanderbilts were not merely rich, they were a different species of human being. Marble house, built for Alva Vanderbilt by William Kissam. Construction cost $11 million, roughly $380 million in today's dollars. $7 million of that was spent on marble alone. Biltmore Estate in North Carolina, built by George Washington Vanderbilt II, Cornelius's grandson. 8,000 acres, 178,000 square feet of floor space, 35 bedrooms, 43 bathrooms, the largest privately owned home in the United States. Total cost, $6 million in the 1890s, over $200 million today, and the annual maintenance costs were staggering. By the end of the 1890s, the Vanderbilt family had collectively spent the equivalent of over $1 billion in today's money on houses. Not businesses, not investments, houses. Cornelius Vanderbilt, the original, had spent almost nothing on himself. He lived relatively simply. He reinvested everything. Every dollar he didn't spend was a dollar that compounded. His grandchildren spent everything. On balls, on mansions, on fashion, on status, on the desperate need to be seen as the aristocracy of a country that technically had no aristocracy. In the winter of 1883, Alva Vanderbilt threw a costume ball at the Fifth Avenue mansion that cost $250,000, roughly $8 million today, for a single evening. 1,200 guests. The guest list included virtually every name in New York society. People spent months preparing their costumes. The party lasted one night. This was the world the Vanderbilt heirs had created for themselves. A world of pure consumption, pure performance, pure spending. And underneath all of it, the fortune was bleeding out. The railroad industry itself was changing. Competition increased, regulation increased. The political environment that had made railroad monopolies so profitable began to shift. The Interstate Commerce Act of 1887, the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890, Theodore Roosevelt's aggressive trust busting in the early 1900s. The world that Cornelius had built his fortune in was being systematically dismantled by the government. And the Vanderbilt heirs, now in the third and fourth generation, were not operators. They were not builders. They were inheritors. Some were intelligent. Some were charming. Some were genuinely talented in art or architecture or society. But none of them had the obsession, the hunger. The willingness to sleep 4 hours a night and outmaneuver every competitor in the market. Cornelius had built an empire because he was willing to do what others would not. His grandchildren had never had to do anything they didn't want to do. And it showed. By the 1920s, the family wealth, once concentrated in a single $200 million fortune, had been divided, subdivided, spent, and diluted across dozens of heirs. By the 1970s, financial historians began to calculate what had happened. The conclusion was staggering. Less than 100 years after Cornelius Vanderbilt died as the richest man in America, there was not a single Vanderbilt among the wealthy. Not one. In 1973, a reunion was held at Vanderbilt University, the university that Cornelius had funded with a $1 million donation in 1873, the largest philanthropic gift in American history at that time. The university had been renamed in his honor. Of the 120 family members who attended that reunion, according to accounts from the period, not one was a millionaire. The Vanderbilt fortune, $200 million in 1885, equivalent to $6.2 billion today, had been completely exhausted. In roughly 48 years, across 3 generations. How does this happen? Researchers and financial historians have studied the Vanderbilt case for decades, and the patterns they found appear in family fortune collapses all over the world. Pattern 1. Division without control. When Cornelius held the fortune, it was unified. Decisions were centralized. Capital was concentrated. The moment it was divided, $70 million to Cornelius II, $55 million to William Kissam, and the rest among other heirs. The leverage disappeared. Multiple smaller fortunes are exponentially weaker than one large one. Each subsequent division made the problem worse. Pattern 2. Lifestyle inflation that outpaces returns. The Vanderbilt mansions were not just expensive to build. They were expensive to maintain. The breakers required dozens of full-time staff. The estates needed constant repair. The social expectations of a Vanderbilt, The balls, the travel, the clothes, the horses created a fixed cost structure that would have challenged even a growing fortune. For a shrinking one, it was fatal. Pattern 3. No culture of stewardship. Cornelius had built the fortune through relentless reinvestment. He lived below his means. He treated money as a tool for generating more money. He did not teach this to his children because, like many self-made people, he found it difficult to transmit hunger to people who had never been hungry. William learned enough to double the fortune, but William's children had grown up in the mansion on Fifth Avenue. They had never seen scarcity. They had never had to choose between spending and investing. The culture of stewardship, the understanding that a fortune is not a pile of money but a living organism that requires feeding, died with William. Pattern 4. No professional management of the family's capital. The Rockefellers, who faced similar pressures, created family offices, trusts, governance structures, professional advisors. They treated the family wealth like a business. The Vanderbilts treated it like a personal account. There was no institutional structure to slow the bleeding. The last Vanderbilt to live in a family mansion was Gloria Vanderbilt. She was born in 1924, the great-great-granddaughter of Cornelius. She grew up in wealth but lost access to much of her inheritance through legal battles in childhood. She went on to build her own career as a fashion designer and artist. She earned her own money. She created her own brand. Her son is Anderson Cooper, the CNN anchor, one of the most recognizable journalists in America. When Gloria Vanderbilt died in 2019, Anderson Cooper revealed in an interview that she had left him almost nothing in inheritance, not because she was cruel, but because she believed, and she said this directly, that an inheritance would rob him of ambition. "I don't believe in inheriting money. I think it's an initiative sucker. I think it's a curse." She had seen what inherited wealth had done to her family. She chose not to pass it on. Cornelius Vanderbilt built $3.2 billion from a $100 loan and 70 years of relentless work. His descendants spent it in 48 years. The money didn't disappear because of bad luck. It didn't disappear because of a market crash or a single catastrophic mistake. It disappeared gradually, through thousands of small decisions that all pointed in the same direction. Spending instead of building, consuming instead of investing, performing wealth instead of creating it. There is a concept in finance called the third-generation curse. The first generation builds, the second generation maintains, the third generation spends. It appears in Chinese proverb, "Wealth never survives 3 generations." It appears in the Italian saying, "From stables to stables in 3 generations." It appears in the Scottish, "The father buys, the son builds, the grandchild sells, and his son begs." The Vanderbilts didn't just illustrate this principle. They became the most expensive proof of it in American history. $200 million, 3 generations, gone. And yet the name endures. The university endures. The Breakers still stands in Newport, Rhode Island, open to the public now, a museum, a monument to a moment when one family briefly held more wealth than most nations. You can walk through those 70 rooms today for $26. That is what remains of $6.2 billion. So what does any of this mean for you? You will probably never build a railroad empire. You will probably never accumulate $200 million. But the forces that destroyed the Vanderbilt fortune operate at every level of wealth. The pattern of lifestyle inflation, spending more as you earn more, does not require a mansion to be destructive. It operates in car payments, in restaurant bills, in subscriptions, in the quiet expansion of what you consider normal. The pattern of division without structure, leaving money to heirs without creating any framework for its management, destroys modest family savings just as surely as it destroyed the Vanderbilt $6.2 billion. The pattern of performance over creation, spending to signal status rather than investing to build security, is as visible today on social media as it was in the ballrooms of 1880s New York. Cornelius Vanderbilt understood something that his grandchildren never learned. Money is not a destination. It is a practice, a discipline, a daily set of decisions that compound over time in one direction or the other. He made those decisions correctly for 70 years. His family stopped making them correctly the day he died, and $6.2 billion became $0 before the century was over. The question is not whether you have $200 million. The question is, which generation are you?